Okay, well, welcome everybody. We'll get the ball rolling. I'm going to be chairing the session today, and I'm joined by Alexandra and Lisa. You can see the images up there. So, what have we got today? Well, here are our three speakers. Lisa Wilding-Brown, CEO of NewMR, Alexandra Kuzmina, futurist and researcher from Nova at MMRR Research Worldwide, and myself. We've got three topics. Alexandra is going to be starting with blending conversational AI with behavioural science, spelt the British way, you'll notice. That's good. Then Lisa's going to come along and talk about fraud trends, one of the really scary things we've seen over the last 18 months, I suppose. And there's been some fantastic presentations from Lisa and some of her colleagues at Innovate MR looking at who are doing the fraud and why they're doing it and maybe how we can stop them. And then I'm going to bring things home with the automating analysis of data with artificial intelligence. So with that, Lisa and I are going to disappear, and I'm going to give keyboard control to Alexandra.
Hello, everyone. Do you know what products you will be buying in 2029? Probably $1 trillion question. So I'm going to talk you through some of the work that we've done to see how we could answer this question. And what we did was an experiment with testing new product ideas. So how we did that, we used conversational AI chatbot in combination with a technique from behavioral science. So who are we? I'm Alexandra Kuzmina. I'm from MMR, and my job is to explore and experiment with emerging technology and new methods. So how did this experiment come about? Came about from conversations with a CPG client who works with in a fast-paced, competitive environment where innovation is one of the key drivers of growth and competitive advantage. And she wanted to find a way to be able to test concept ideas that are 5 or 10 years away in the future. But we as researchers know that predicting the future and future behaviors and preferences is a challenge because future is uncertain and people struggle to give accurate answers to questions about their future choices and actions. And research even shows that we can't relate to our future self. So brain scans show that most of us use one part of the brain when we think about ourselves and a different part of the brain when we think about strangers or our future self. So in other words, our future self is just like a stranger. So most of the examples of future thinking research are either in finance or healthcare. So for example, a few years ago, UCLA researchers aged photos using software, and then that inspired Merrill Lynch to introduce a new feature on their website where you could upload your photo and it would age your photo to sort of try to evoke empathy to your future self so you can ponder how much to save for your retirement. Now, this was pre-generative AI, and this feature is no longer available on that website. So if anyone knows what happened to it, please share in the chat. But more recently, Aviva created this video where they aged people using makeup like in a movie. So let me play that for a few seconds.
Adam and Tony are taking part in a social experiment.
3, 2, 1, open your eyes.
Oh my god, I look like my nan!
Okay, so why am I showing you this? Wouldn't it be great to have a setup like this where we could run focus groups, for example, where participants would be able to get closer to their future selves? But of course, some of these things might not be as scalable and available to most of us who work in research. However, there's this technique from behavioral science called future thinking priming, so FTP for short, which we can use to apply for our research needs at scale. And this is what I'm going to talk to you about today. So what is future thinking priming? It is a technique that involves prompting participants to vividly envision their future selves and circumstances, which then helps to bridge that gap between current preferences and future behaviors. So we had a hypothesis that introducing this technique would encourage participants to be more engaged and also to be more future orientated in their response compared to those who were not exposed to this intervention. And to test this hypothesis, we did what we do really well at NewMR. So we did an experiment, and we designed it facilitated by conversational AI chatbot, because chatbot is becoming a new standard in our industry, and because of the conversational flow and its ability to probe dynamically. So we're seeing really good results because of this, because this probing makes people feel heard and valued. So this in this experiment, it was a concept test where we tested functional chocolate infused with mushrooms that is meant to help you sleep. So the products already exist in the market, but somewhere at the fringes. So awareness was really, really low. And we had 2 cells. In the first cell, it was just a standard chatbot engagement. And in the second cell, we had this future thinking priming element. So this is where we blended conversational AI with behavioral science. The chatbot took participants to 2029 and asked them to imagine their future selves, what they would be like, what typical day would be like, and what would be important to them in 5 years' time. And only then we showed them this concept, this new concept idea. So obviously adding the FTP element, the future thinking element, added a little bit to the completion time, but participants didn't seem to mind at all. So when we look at the engagement results, the future thinking priming cell, there's the blue line across the top. It consistently tops the engagement metrics, making future thinking priming in combination with the chatbot another tool in our toolkit to increase engagement, making it more fun and personable, and also offering us a lot more value. So speaking of value and engagement, usually the length of an open-ended answer is a good indication of participants' engagement as well. And the future thinking priming cell got us 4 more words on average. And beyond that, we also employ thematic co-occurrences analysis, which what I mean by this is it's another step that follows thematic analysis, and it looks at how themes are connected in the open-ended response. So the more connections there are in one open-ended response, the richer the insight and the better the story that we can tell from that data. And the benefits of getting twice as many co-occurring themes is that we can get a better understanding of the complexities of the experiences that are often very difficult to capture with more traditional methods. So it helps us unravel the connections between themes as they are conceptualized in participants' heads. And on top of that, we also got a lot more future-oriented mentions. And this is where they mentioned or implied future. So having more of these mentions meant that they not only engaged with the concept, but also thought a little bit harder about how it would fit into their lives and how well it might align with their future selves, their health and wellness goals, and benefits like helping sleep. We also learned that some were concerned about eating the chocolate right before bed because they have already brushed their teeth. So maybe the comms need to be around suggesting a routine or different occasions. So loads of value and useful optimization, validation, and activation pointers. So it looks like this technique is ticking all the boxes for our original hypothesis. Now, this technique also doing 2 more interesting and useful things. For example, it also encourages more words from the younger group. So we had 7 extra words on average, which is fantastic news for those of us who are trying to engage with younger audiences. And last but not least, it did something interesting for our male audience as well. It helped them open up a little bit more. So traditionally, male respondents may be less verbose in articulating their thoughts and feelings during studies. And this technique seems to encourage more open and detailed responses that can lead to richer data and better understanding of their preferences and decision-making process. So all those good things that we're looking for. So to sum up, we've proven that our original hypothesis, so this combination of an intelligent chatbot coupled with the technique, the future thinking priming technique, does indeed increase engagement, and people are happy to spend more time and give us more useful feedback and the open ends. And it just helps participants to slightly shift their mindset and encourage that blue sky thinking, that's foresight and ideation, and also help us to show them new concept ideas, which in turn helps clients to choose and focus on most viable ones. So again, optimization and activation goals. It is not a glass ball. I'm not going to claim that it's going to predict the products that people are going to buy in the future that with 100% accuracy. But what it does do, that it gets us closer to that because of that connection and the deeper, meaningful interaction that we have with participants. So with that, concludes my presentation. Thank you so much. And yeah, I'm really curious to see if there are any questions.
Thanks, Alexandra. Lisa, your initial thoughts?
I thought that was great, Alexandra. Thanks for that that presentation. I mean, as someone who has spent the lion's share of my career, which is 20 plus years now at this stage, working in the research space and working with participants, respondent engagement is something that's very top of mind and something I think our industry has struggled with. So I think the results speak for themselves. It's just so great to see that level of engagement despite the longer LOI. Really, really quite compelling. And, you know, I've seen absolutely an uptick in chatbot survey requests coming to Innovate MR. So we regularly recruit for those studies, and we've seen the same positive feedback coming from participants as well. They seem very, very engaged, and they like that type of exercise, and certainly it's yielding accurate insights. So it's really great to see, and I hope that, you know, with the sort of surfacing of Gen AI and all that presents for the industry, that probing accuracy is going to get even more relevant and accurate and customized for the participant in hand. And we'll see more of this type of work. So yeah, congrats on the great work here.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your thoughts, Lisa. Yes, we do indeed.
So I can see that Claire Marie has put her hand up. If you want to type your question, Claire Marie, into the chat stream, we'll be able to see that and we'll be able to respond to it. I've actually got a question which links to Lisa's presentation around fraud. Do you think this sort of initiative makes it easier to spot fraud and deal with it?
Yeah, sort of kind of a natural deterrent because we're trying to engage, and so I think chatbots have a natural capacity to filter those. So it's really difficult to copy paste into a chatbot. It's almost impossible. So yeah, totally. And I do see a question in the chat around from Dave, are appeal results more positive for concept with engagement? That's an excellent question, and I was hoping someone would would ask that. So something interesting happened there when we looked at that. So if we there were no differences between males and females, for example, but when we looked at different age, how people of different age groups reacted, those in both groups, so those who were exposed to the intervention and who weren't, something interesting happened with the younger group. So the older group seemed to be kind of really set in their ways. So the middle group would be slightly more positive to the new concept presented to them. But it's doing something really interesting for the younger audience. It's kind of, it seems that it's making them think a lot harder and kind of engage with the concept a lot better. So we did see quite a bit of polarization, so they either like it or hate it, so there's no middle ground, which is really interesting. And as I said, it's just a first experiment. There's loads of scope to probe and see what sort of use cases would be feedback for this type of method.
There are several questions. What about B2B? Have you tried this with B2B yet?
That's an interesting question. So, my background is in B2B. That would be a really interesting thing to do. But we are a consumer insights agency at NewMR, so we work with consumer predominantly. But I can't see why not you couldn't try it with B2B. It's a very versatile tool. You could, do all sorts of designs from, ideation sessions, kind of before going into an ideation session, for example, whether it's a B2B audience or consumers or panelists, for example.
Yeah, I can add to that too, Ray. I mean, we
Yep.
do a lot of B2B research at Innovate MR, but I think a lot of the chatbot surveys that we've seen coming from our clients have been mostly focused on consumer. But I agree with Alexandra. I think it's absolutely an area for us to go into, and hopeful that clients will be inspired by what they saw here. And I have to say, Alexandra, it's so great to see some of those more difficult sample cohorts, like just the younger cohort, as well as young males, showing higher levels of engagement, because historically those audience profiles have been more challenging. So that's a great kind of answer or solution to some of the problems that I think our industry has experienced over the years.
So we've also got a query from somebody who thought that the uplift from 18 words to 22 was modest when looked at others. But I guess the point here is that they were both chatbot surveys.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. They were, but so we were not comparing it with more standard kind of online traditional kind of tick box survey, and that if we compare to that, the number would be a lot lower. So we've done experiments with that, and we see really impressive results from chatbots.
And then there's a question from in the Q&A tool. Have you experienced any future thinking approaches that provide a particular perspective, scenario foresight, or specifically framing the future? And I'm going to add to that, have you also considered backcasting, where you create the future and you then get them to look backwards?
That's a very interesting tool. So when we kind of started scoping this, it was the main idea was to test those future concepts with something a really simple method, really cost-effective method. But yeah, it sounds really interesting to be able to use kind of foresight techniques that you mentioned not in a qualitative setting, but at scale. That would definitely be yield some fascinating results.
So unless there is anything else, I think we're all good. A big thank you to Lisa, Alexandra, and of course, all of you. Big thank you to all of our sponsors. Big thank you to anybody out there who's one of our patrons. You're much appreciated. And we look forward to seeing you all again soon.